everyone and welcome back to the channel for today's video. So in today's video I'm going to be doing my long awaited plaza decoration build video. If you've been watching my streams or kind of keeping up with my builds and stuff, you'll know that it's been a long time coming that I've wanted to redo my plaza. I've had it destroyed for such a long time, and I was actually waiting for one crucial item, which is the new marble fence from the Storybook Vale store. Obviously you can do this build without this fence, it's definitely not essential, but I personally just wanted to basically use this marble fencing as a base for the whole of my plaza's theme. So I was waiting until Scrooge decided to give this to me, and he finally did. So I was very excited to see that I could finally start mapping in my plaza and going for a different vibe. If you've seen my plaza builds before, I usually go for like a big city vibe, and this time I decided to go for something more romantic and village-like. So as you'll see, I've put in some more houses rather than the big shopping buildings. So obviously I haven't got my usual buildings in here, such as like Daisy's boutique, Scrooge's store, Remy's restaurant. Those kind of buildings, they are actually going to go somewhere else in my valley, but for now I wanted to make more of a whimsical kind of village town, which I felt like the buildings that I've picked, which are obviously majority premium shop buildings, fit better with that vibe. So obviously you could definitely interchange these buildings with the more useful ones like Scrooge's and Remy's and stuff like that. You could easily swap them out, so that is something I will say. If you did want to kind of follow this kind of guideline but swap the buildings out, it would definitely still work. So as you can tell, to start with, I've obviously mapped in my pathway sections. I've obviously made like a kind of rustic road section as well as the main street path to be the main pavement. I just love the mainstream path and I feel like it fits with this more natural vibe. And then I start using the fences to start mapping in one of the sections that I wanted to have symmetrical on both sides of this plaza, which is going to be a big kind of water structure. This was one of the things I knew I was going to include in this build and obviously wanted this fencing for. So I start mapping that in and adding in some water just to get the symmetry right, and also the sizing. I obviously had to mess around a little bit with where the buildings were and where things were, just to make sure it was still functional and I could still get round. But that is obviously something that will continue throughout the build, but this is like the main part I wanted to get put in at the start. So once I'd mapped those in, I then, as you can see, I'm doing the pathway extended out to the different exits in the plaza. Obviously the plaza does have so many different like exits, entrances, stairway areas, so I wanted to make sure I get these ones leading to the different biomes mapped in, and they are quite tight small sections, so I wanted to make sure they were wide enough that obviously myself and also villagers can just get through easily, because I've had it before where characters get stuck and it's just an absolute nightmare. So I wanted to get those mapped in, and then I actually decided around the two bigger houses, so the Haunted Mansion and the Victorian style house, I decided to add in some of the Alice in Wonderland hedges. These were from a premium shop bundle, but there are hedges in the furniture menu you can use instead as an alternative, but I wanted to use those in here to map around the houses. These do obviously, as you can see, block the left and right exits from the main well, which may be something that you're not a huge fan of, so you could definitely leave gaps in these hedges to make it so that you can actually get through here. I personally wasn't too fussed. I felt like I just wasn't bothered about having them covered over. They weren't too much of a problem for me, but that is something to bear in mind if you do use these a lot and you want to be able to get out of either side. Just leave a gap in the hedge or kind of rescale it of how you want it to be so that you can make this functional. around the main centre of the plaza, I wanted to obviously again use some of these fences to map in kind of a structured area and add in some lighting. I also then add in some of the iron brick fences behind the cafe and the bakery, just to make these little areas. These will obviously be filled with foliage and stuff as we go forward, but for now I wanted to get those mapped in, as well as start putting in some of the bigger trees behind these back corner houses. I wanted there to be a nice kind of overgrown feel in the areas outside of the town, because this isn't so much of a structured city, it is more of like kind of a natural kind of old school town. So I wanted to still be able to have a bunch of trees and a bunch of foliage around, which obviously I will add to and kind of progress with as we go forward, but for now I wanted to at least map in some of the smaller bits that were going by these two separate pack houses. And as I go through, you'll see I start adding a variety of others to kind of fit the vibes of the different houses that were included, and obviously using trees and foliage from all the different maps. Now at this point with the ponds, I actually decided to swap out the two bigger water tiles and add in some of the smaller tiles that you get in the Neverland River kit, which is obviously what I'm using to create these ponds. And I decided to actually add some of the ones that have the lily pads and the little like logs in, just because I felt like it made it feel a lot more natural, it had a lot more variety to it, and just kind of worked better for the theme I was going for. And then underneath these tiles, I added in some of the fountain tiles that you get from Scrooge's store. If you're not familiar with these, they're just little square tiles that have like a beam of water come out of them every so often. These really help to make the water look a lot more featured, as if it's kind of in a more upscale kind of area rather than an actual pond. So I decided to pop those underneath in kind of just a diagonal pattern before I started working on some of the areas outside the bakery and the coffee shop at the front of the plaza. Now, something I obviously wanted to focus on in this build was a lot of symmetrical design. Obviously, there is a lot of stuff that I kept different, but for the most part I wanted to keep it feeling very symmetrical. So as you can see, I added in a couple of the more retro style cars into this like road. So I used Oswald's car and also the craftable fire truck because they feel a little bit more old school to me. So I added those in, added some grates onto the floor, and then obviously for lighting, again kept a very, very symmetrical pattern, which you'll notice on this main road bit. I just felt like for this town it just made complete sense, and also it's very satisfying to my brain when things are symmetrical. So as you'll notice, a lot of it is symmetrical where it can be, but I did want to keep obviously some variety between the different buildings so they'd have their own like unique style to them. Now, as I continue the marble fence further down between the different buildings, I will just say, obviously, as you can see, I do use a lot of it in this build. It is basically what I was waiting to get from Scrooge's in order to do this build. However, if you don't have the storybook veil or you haven't got hold of this marble fencing yet, I will say if I hadn't used this, I would definitely have used some alternatives. My top three probably would have been the Remy raw iron fence, which is this really nice black kind of designed one. I also would have used some more of the iron brick fences. I did use a little bit in here, but definitely would have used those more. And then obviously the classic white picket fence also would have worked really nicely. So if you don't want to use this fence as much as I did, you don't like it, you don't have it, any of those things, those would be my top three alternatives. I feel like using a mixture of all three of those would be really, really nice to kind of fit with the vibes of the whole build. But you could essentially use any fence you wanted, but those would be the ones that I would have used as an alternative. So around the outskirts of the plaza, obviously I wanted to stick with the more rural theme, so I added in a bunch of foliage behind the marble fences. I did have to use a lot of the Eternity Isle ones just because they have a much smaller hitbox. So they kind of the only things that fit. And then I added in some crafted flower beds as well as a bunch of other foliage to create a symmetrical design on either side. And then I kind of went into these two bigger areas and I was debating what to put in there. I actually wasn't 100% sure on what to put, and then I decided actually some of the gazebos would work really, really well. I knew I wanted to use the Tiana one on the bigger side. And then on the side of the Haunted Mansion, I wasn't 100% sure, but then I actually discovered something with the craftable gazebo, which obviously I will show you in a bit, which basically convinced me to use it. But I obviously wanted to include something in those bigger spaces. I also added in Beast Greenhouse, which you'll see in a minute, next to the flower shop, which I'll go ahead and decorate in a bit, as well as starting to add some more decorations outside the front of the bakery, and all those smaller furniture items that I haven't got to yet. So as I was saying before, I decided actually to move the screenhouse up here next to the flower shop. I had a little gap to fill and I was going to just make like a little flower market stall, but I decided actually what perfect place is better than to have the screenhouse here, which I just love the look of. And I don't utilise enough in build, so I decided to pop it here next to the flower shop because it fit perfectly. And then obviously added a lot of floral furniture items outside the front, such as the new wheelbarrows we got with the flowers in, some pots, some little flowers, bigger flower arrangements to fit with that kind of florist feel, and then obviously we'll add some natural foliage behind here as well to obviously fit with that and blend it in a bit better, so it kind of just had that nice floral feel to it all the way around. So at this point I decided to start adding in the trees behind these buildings. Again, as you'll see, I go for a symmetrical look. I add some of the same trees on either side, which I do play around with for a while to kind of get the sizing and the different colours right. I used a lot of the natural trees that we just get in the base game, just because obviously I wanted them to feel a little bit more just of a natural vibe. So I added in some oaks and some maples and things like that to just create a symmetrical look behind these houses, and then obviously we'll go around these with other plants and foliage to blend it all in and make it look a little bit more overgrown. If you are someone who is on a stricter item limit, just bear in mind you definitely don't need to add this much foliage. I just like to make things look quite overgrown, especially in a build like this, but I would definitely just minimise the amount that I've used bigger plants to obviously keep that item limit low, and these aren't essential things to the build anyway. These are just kind of backing decoration, so do not feel like you have to add this many kind of bits of foliage in those more hidden areas, because essentially you're not really going to see behind here very much anyway, so you could definitely keep it a lot more bare in order to keep your item limit a lot lower. I'd added some of the key furniture pieces I knew I wanted to include, such as the little ice cream stand and some books outside Belle's library, I then started to try and figure out how I was going to integrate this craftable gazebo into this spot outside the Haunted Mansion. Now, I knew I wanted to use this gazebo, but it was just in such an odd space that I kind of wanted to be able to do the outside of it and figure out the structure of it before I popped anything underneath it. So as you can see, I do play around for a while with the pathway, the foliage behind it and things like that. It does take me some time to play around with it, but eventually I end up with a design for it that I actually really liked. And something I did discover whilst doing this was that you can actually put these marble fences underneath the gazebo. So you'll see as I go further on that I put them underneath the different beams of the gazebo, which ends up looking really, really cute, and I really love the look of. You could definitely make some really cool structures using this. You could make some closed off gazebos with lots of flowers underneath, as well as kind of use it to border it. So as you'll see as I go forward, I start to kind of play around with that and figure out how to just put a little bit of seating in here as well to make it this really cozy, quaint spot. Now in these two spots behind the bakery and the coffee shop, I wanted to add in some sort of structure. On one side I did put in the new topiary from the premium shop, which is like the really cute butterfly one, and I did want to have kind of like a matching one on the other side, but as you can see it does not fit. I could not figure out a way to make it fit without sacrificing a lot of the space of the pathing and the symmetry, but that is something you could definitely tweak and change if you wanted to. But obviously as the coffee shop is slightly bigger and wider than the bakery, it kind of messed up my symmetry, so I decided instead to add in one of the green and brown fountains that we got from the Winter Star Park, which actually I haven't utilized a lot, and obviously use some foliage to kind of cover up those little like snowy covered bits, which means you can't really see the snow. But I would say if you did want to make sure you could use two of the bigger topiaries, you will just have to change the symmetry of these back sections a little bit, which was something I wasn't planning on doing, but is definitely an option. And then obviously around them added in a bunch of foliage to blend those in and to create them as kind of more center points behind here, that the fencing had kind of surrounded. yeah, around the Victorian house, I decided to obviously add in some more foliage, and then I also put Nana's house outside here as well. Obviously, if you do have her from the premium shop, if you get her to level 5, then you get this really cute little house for her, and I just felt like it fits so well with this Victorian home. It really matched. So I decided to pop that on one side with a little pet bowl and ball outside of it, and then a bench on the other side before I started working on this gazebo. Now, obviously, this gazebo did come with the Tiana star path, and hopefully will come back in the premium shop soon, because I know a lot of people are after this gazebo. There are definitely other gazebos you could use instead though, but I obviously wanted to include this because I felt like it fit with the kind of whimsical village vibe I was going for. So I created a little path coming out of one side of it, surrounded that with some foliage just to blend it in, and then obviously when I go to do the inside of the gazebo, I was umming and ahhing and debating what to put in here. I didn't want to include another picnic blanket because obviously I had done that in the gazebo on the other side, so I thought, what could I actually include in here that would fit really well with this village vibe? And I actually end up going with one of the tavern pianos as well as a little bench to just keep it very simplistic and very natural, and I just felt like it really fit in this town. I feel like if we had a little like string quartet band, I feel like this is where they would be. That's what I would have put in here, but as we don't have that, I decided to just go for a little piano and seating vibe inside of here, as well as some warm candle lighting as well to keep everything lit up. Now for the final touches, I added some seating around the front of the plaza, as well as some final little bits and bobs that I wanted to kind of just add a little bit more character. Again, they're not really essential things, like especially the little flower tiles definitely aren't necessary, but this was just more for my final touches. So here is the final plaza. As you can see, I've made it sunset, which is just my favourite time to look at builds I've created. So as you can see, when we first head out, we've obviously got the coffee shop and also the bakery opposite each other, with some seating outside. I've obviously added some food and some drinks to the outside of these as well to give them a lot more character, and I feel like just helps elevate the build slightly. So obviously on one side we've got that, and then on the other side I added also a little counter to put some of the bakery items on display as well. And then we've obviously got the marble fences and these craftable lighting kind of stone pillars that we can get from the Storybook Vale to this side, and then obviously some seating and some water fountains on the other side. Now as we head down on this side, we've obviously got Charlotte's house from the premium shop, which I feel like works so well in here. We've got the little ice cream stall, which goes with the retro feel, and then obviously Belle's library with some books outside to again fit with this whimsical vibe. We've got our symmetrical lamppost, and then our crafted fire engine to fit the retro feel as well, and then obviously the marble fences leading us out down to the meadow on this side, with the floral kind of design in the middle, and then obviously the pathway leading up to the sunlit plateau, which again is just completely symmetrical with this fencing and lighting. Next up, we've obviously got our haunted mansion, which has got the gazebo in front, which I've obviously used the fences to keep in the picnic blanket and added some little decor items around that to keep it feeling functional and as if people actually would use this. We've then got our first courtyard water pond in front of the haunted mansion, which I've just put some floral designs outside the front of, and obviously the hedges to make it feel a little bit more upscale. And then inside the courtyard pond, I've obviously added some fountain tiles to give it this more fancy structure, and obviously some lily pads and lighting to make it feel very overgrown and to create a very natural look to it. Behind the coffee shop, we've obviously got our fountain and some foliage inside this brick fenced area just to give it some more structure, and then obviously some seating and a little ice cream stand to go behind it. Heading to the other side, we've obviously got the symmetrical bench and lighting outside the bakery. We've then obviously opposite that got Lady's House from Lady and the Tramp, again from the premium shop. I just love this house in here and the symmetry between that and Charlotte's house because they're quite similar designs, and I kind of liked having some homes in here. And then next to that, we have obviously got the flower shop with lots of flowers and decor outside, like a little stall. We've obviously got Beast's greenhouse, which I'm really glad I ended up putting up here. I feel like it fits really well and goes with the flower shop. And then we've obviously got our exit down to the meadow as well. Opposite that, we've obviously got our symmetrical car with Oswald's car, our opposite side going up to the Forest of Valor, and then we have got our whimsical gazebo, which, as you can see, I've popped the piano and the little bench in, which I just feel like was a really nice touch. I ended up really liking this idea to go in here. Our little path leading us out, and then again our symmetrical courtyard pond with the same fountain tiles and design inside, and then behind that we have obviously got the little topiary in the symmetrical side behind the bakery to keep it feeling very, very structured and light. I really love this topiary and I was glad I was able to use it in here. And then finally we've got the big Victorian house with just some floral bushes outside. We've got Nana's little house outside as well with a little dog bowl and a little toy, and also a little bench on the other side as a little seating spot. So here are some shots of the final build. I'm so glad I finally got around to doing my plaza, and Scrooge finally gave me the marble fence that I was looking for in order to do it. As I've said throughout the video and at the start, you could definitely do this with other fences. I would obviously recommend the Remy wrought iron fence, the white picket fence, and also the iron brick one. I feel like those work really, really well as alternatives, but you could definitely use whatever you wanted to. But I wanted to make use of these gorgeous fences, and I'm glad I finally got this plaza done. It's very different to my recent plazas. They've been a lot more city vibe and have obviously a lot more of our essential buildings in it, such as Scrooge's store and Remy's restaurant, stuff like that, which, if you keep tuned, I will be making a city in a different biome, which is why they are not here. But you could definitely swap out some of these premium shop buildings with character houses as well as these kind of bigger buildings as an alternative. I feel like that would work really, really well. Let me know down below what you think of the build, and if you enjoyed it, make sure you like and subscribe if you did and you want to see more from me, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!